Let me back up a sec. If you told me a year ago that a bunch of people in pastel polos and golf carts could bulldoze a man's entire life just because it didn't fit their rulebook, I'd have laughed in your face. But here's the thing. When you wake up at sunrise and find your lake cabin, your wife's last dream, buried under a mountain of splinters, and then get slapped with a $28,000 bill for the privilege, yeah, it hits different. I know, I sound bitter. Maybe I am. But you stick with me, because what happened next, well, it's something folks around here will talk about for a long, long time. They thought I'd just fold, crawl off with my tail between my legs. What they forgot, or maybe never bothered to notice, is that the world they'd built, their roads, their little kingdom, stood on a foundation they didn't even own. And all it took was a man with nothing left to lose and a knack for paperwork. You know what I mean? Let me tell you about that cabin. I spent years dreaming about it. A little place tucked into the pines with a porch that caught the evening breeze off the water. Jenny, my wife, she picked the spot herself, drew it on a napkin one night while we watched reruns and talked about forever. She wanted something quiet, just us and the loons, a little smoke curling up from the stone chimney. We were supposed to build it together after I hung up my navy boots and she finished chemo. But life isn't a storybook, is it? When it came time to build, it was just me, a stack of lumber, and a promise I'd made to a woman who kept every promise she ever made to me. I built that place with my own hands. Every stone in the chimney hauled up from the creek, every board cut, and cursed at until it fit. When I finally drove in that last nail at sunset, I stood back, raw hands and all, and just breathed. It felt like peace, real peace, for the first time in years. I ran up a flag on the dock, brand new, snapping in the wind, and for one beautiful moment, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Then came the first letter, slipped under the door, fancy paper and all, like an invitation to someone else's wedding. The HOA. I'd heard about them, of course. Mostly folks in new houses across the cove who liked matching mailboxes and rules about how tall your grass could be. But I bought my land long before they put up their first sign. They didn't matter to me, until they did. Bylaw this, bylaw that. First it was my flagpole, then the shed, then my porch, then the noise from my shop when I welded a neighbor's tractor hitch. Every week, a new notice, a new fine. And always Karen Dunst at the center, president, clipboard, and a permanent look like she'd just smelled something rotten. I tried to reason with them, brought my deed and survey to their clubhouse meeting, pointed out that my land was never under their umbrella. Karen just smiled her tight little smile, said, "The rules apply to everyone, Mr. Winslow. By living here, you agreed." I'll admit, something in me cracked. It wasn't about the flagpole or the porch. It was about power, her need to flex it, and my refusal to bow. Next thing I know, I'm pulling up my drive at dawn, and where my cabin should be, there's nothing but rubble and a yellow bulldozer, engine still ticking in the cold. Diesel in the air. My flag, bent and trampled. My wife's photo album, torn and dust-choked, the only thing that survived. I stood there numb, rage-hot and hollow, and then I saw the invoice. $28,000 charged to some community account I never even knew existed. Demolition necessary, it said. Emergency provision. Unsafe structure. Rules are rules. Karen even showed up on the local news, talking about aesthetic harmony and community safety, the camera catching her satisfied little smirk. What do you do when the world tells you you're powerless? You sleep in your truck. You eat cold beans off your tailgate. You grieve. You rage. You curse the walls. I filed a complaint with the county. Nothing. Called a lawyer. Waste of breath. Every system, every rule, stacked against me. I was just a stubborn old vet sleeping in the ruins of his own life. But here's where the story starts to turn, and if you've ever been kicked while you're down, maybe you'll understand. See, in all those thick packets of bylaws and fine print, I noticed something odd. Something about the land under the roads, the clubhouse, the mailboxes. It was leased, not owned. That was weird. Curiosity got the better of me, so I spent a whole afternoon in the basement of the county clerk's office, digging through dusty files. And there it was. Every inch of Lakeside Meadows' precious infrastructure rested on land owned by some shell company in the city, leased out in 5-year chunks. And the lease? Set to expire in 2 months. That's the twist nobody saw coming, least of all Karen. I called my brother-in-law, Dana, a real estate lawyer with the kind of eyes that see through walls. He helped me put together an anonymous LLC and quietly made an offer on the land. The holding company didn't care who bought it. They just wanted a check. So while Karen was busy finding me for community disruption, I was becoming the landlord under her entire kingdom. Now, I didn't throw my weight around right away. No, I waited, kept up appearances, cleaned up my wreckage by day, slept in my truck at night, nodded to neighbors who gave me that mix of pity and fear. I even took up a new hobby, surveying. Spent a whole day in the middle of Lakeside Drive with a tripod, jotting notes, planting flags. Neighbors slowed down, stared, but no one said a word. Except Karen, who rolled up in her golf cart, demanded I stop obstructing HOA property. I smiled, shrugged, kept measuring. Just checking my boundaries, I said. The power shift was slow, but when it hit hard. Phase 2. Well, that was about taking away Karen's favorite toy, the bulldozer. See, after the demolition, I tracked down the contractor who'd flattened my cabin. Turns out Karen had stiffed him, shorted his payment by thousands with some nonsense about non-compliance. I paid him what he was owed, and in return, bought the contract's right of first refusal for any future demo jobs in the community. It was a detail Karen missed, but I didn't. So when she tried to tear down the Garcia family's fence, good folks, 2 kids, just trying to keep their dogs safe, I showed up with the paperwork and told the new crew they'd be in breach if they so much as touched a post. The Garcias kept their fence, Karen lost her bulldozer, and neighbors started whispering. Maybe, just maybe, the king had returned. You ever see fear turn to hope? It's a powerful thing. Folks I barely knew started stopping by, sharing their own stories. Fines for bird baths, for basketball hoops, for roses that were the wrong color. One day I found a note under my windshield, then another, then a whole stack. People were ready for a change. They just needed a spark. The next HOA meeting, the clubhouse was packed. I stood up and laid it all out. I owned the land under every road, every sidewalk, the dock, the clubhouse itself. As of next week, unless the HOA agreed to sweeping changes, access was done. Karen tried to shout me down, called me a liar, but the paperwork was real and the crowd was on my side. When I read their own bylaw, 3.4c, allowing any landowner to call a vote of no confidence, the room exploded. Folks started chanting, Karen banged her gavel, but it was over. But a cornered bully is a dangerous thing. She turned nasty, anonymous flyers, whispers about me being a developer out to raise the place, rumors that I was after revenge. Maybe I was at first, but then something changed. One morning, my water started tasting strange. Lab tests showed antifreeze. Somebody had tried to poison my well. I called the sheriff. Nothing they could do, no proof. But my Navy buddy Smoke came by with military-grade cameras, and we lit the place up with floodlights and night vision. 2 nights later, the cameras caught Karen herself creeping around my property, snapping pictures, face lit up like a deer in headlights. I didn't call the cops, not yet. The day of the vote, Karen showed up with her clipboard, barking about a pre-demolition inspection. I played the video for her, watched her face go pale, called the reporter, called the sheriff. Karen left my driveway in handcuffs, the neighbors filming, the world finally seeing the truth. She was charged with trespass and felony water tampering, and the board folded in days. The HOA crumbled, lawsuits piled up, the clubhouse went to auction, and I bought it for pennies, just to make sure no one like her would ever sit in that chair again. 2 months later, I hosted the first ever Liberation Day barbecue. The whole neighborhood came. Garcias brought salad, Smoke brought ribs. Even the lady whose roses were uprooted baked a pie. I stood on those clubhouse steps and said, no more ridiculous rules. You own your homes. Just try not to be jerks to each other. There was laughter, some tears, a feeling in the air like freedom after a long, bitter winter. We rebuilt the cabin, together this time, neighbors hammering, wiring, planting flowers where the bulldozer tracks had been. Smoke welded a new flagpole, taller than the last. When we finished, I mounted a plaque, Jenny's Landing, for every vet who built something beautiful and was told they weren't allowed to keep it. And as the sun went down over the lake, I finally felt whole again. Funny thing is, Karen took my cabin, tried to take everything. But in the end, she gave me something more. She gave us a community. Turns out the strongest thing you can build isn't a house, or even revenge. It's a neighborhood that stands together, no matter how many rules they throw your way. Now, you've heard my side. What do you think? Was I right? Or did I just pick a fight and win because I could? Would you have let it go? Drop a comment, share your own story, or tell me I'm out of line. I want to hear it. Because in the end, justice isn't just about who's right. It's about what kind of place we all want to live in.